All right, we're back, continuing to work on the painting, and I got my colors out: white, yellow, red, dark red or magenta, black, and I'm ready to go. I was flipping this painting a couple of times, but it doesn't matter. This is the right side, and it works on two other versions of the painting work anyway. Spray a little bit of water. And start mixing. Pick a brush that's suitable for working on what I am set out to work. Okay, the strategy. This has been worked, decided, and blocked in. We can clearly see general areas, general properties of the painting. We can see the shadows. We can see some mid-tone. And we can see light, masses, and mass. Now we're going to take each part that's been worked on and take it further. More information, more elements. Let's create this painting. I am going back to the shadows that were set before, and I am finding more particular information within those shadow or dark areas. I have a reference that I'm looking at. It's on my computer screen. There is no need for you guys to look at it while I'm working on the painting, because I am translating a photograph into a painting. And look at my strategy. If the tree trunk is lighter than the foliage of the leaves behind it, then I am cutting or delineating, outlining the dark beside the tree, and then I paint over away from the edge of the tree. So if one surface is lighter, then the adjacent area beside that surface needs to be darker. There are also color properties to these lights and darks. I am using my nature green. This is when yellow is mixed with black and a little bit of white is added. It makes for this not too saturated, wonderful looking natural green, and I like that green. More subtle. So what would be a good strategy is to not to expect excellent work from myself when I first start out, but to give myself some time and space to warm up and to get really into my project. Once I am digging in and feeling it, things will move along with much more agreement and cohesiveness than in the very beginning of my painting session. So I stay kind of loose and uninhibited, and I proceed with kind of lots of leeway for like just give myself a break pretty much and just participate. You see, I am setting up the foliage within the top of the trees to be even darker than it was before, because this is not dark enough, and I figured it's competing in contrast with the background. So I really want to go back to what is foreground or what is closer and move it out, separate it from what is further away. I mix a new type of variation of green, so I mix a little bit and make a tiny bit of lighter or darker or more yellow or more gray type of green, and then I paint a couple of strokes on different angles. I'm trying to build movement, dynamic movement into these elements. Avoid repetition with color, increase the complexity of color, increase the dynamic properties of my brush strokes or marks. And I'm going ahead and I'm going to work into all of the shadows that are closer to us and get them slightly more done than before without finishing anything at any time. So this cannot be finished too quickly or right away, so you know, just stay with it. Stay with it. I am adding some water with the spray bottle, and I also have a water container off to the side so that my paint is flexible, easily movable. It's ready to do its job. It's ready to do the dance. The paint is nice and buttery and it flows well, and as soon as I don't have paint in my brush, then I load the brush, mix a little more color. I am not just repainting the top foliage. I am also saving some previous efforts so that there's already some nice work that's been done there. And if I'm keen on spotting good areas, then I can save them and I can plot my next moves. Maybe there's gonna be a branch with a leafy branch lower over here, and I want to tie that in with the top a little bit, create continuity and a connection between the areas of shadow throughout the painting. Sometimes I put some music on when I'm painting. It makes it a lot more fun. And I step back to evaluate my progress. I want to keep an eye on the overall progress that I'm making or that I'm trying to make. The method of painting I use is layering and being able to go forward a few steps and then go back a few steps. So it's so flexible. We can literally paint over anything that we're starting and improve as we go along with this layering. As this green is coming in to the foliage of the tree, it can also go in a little bit into other areas of the painting, so that there is a correlation between color, so that there is a color consistency throughout the painting. I am working on mid-size to a bit larger of a canvas. This is a fair-sized canvas, but this exercise or any painting exercise could be done on a smaller canvas or on a bigger canvas. So when you set up at home at your paint station, you could work on smaller size canvases quite effectively. I am trying to keep the paint marks fairly flat at this point. I do not want to make bubbles of paint extend away from the surface too much too early. It is more instrumental to keep the layers fairly lean, fairly thin, before we get them to be more pasty and thicker. I am also trying to speak clearly and slowly because I find that there is really a lot going on here, and if I go slow and if you can hear me really well, you are more likely to pick up on what I'm saying. And I know you guys are talented and intelligent. Maybe more intelligent than I am. Hopefully you're more intelligent than I am. That top really gotten darker. Did you notice? Ooh. So let's bring some of that dark down to where the lower area here is. It is really helpful to treat the painting as if you are not actually painting trees or grass or leaves. You know, just look at the shapes of color. Just think about like abstract shapes of light and dark and color. So I am more compelled. We'll get a lot more done that way, because a painting is an illusion of a scene or an impression, and an illusion. It's not an actual real scene, and it's not reliant on photographic resolution. So I'm setting up these dark green diagonals to promote overall feeling of moving this way, you know, further into the background. I am not painting any leaves or grass. I am thinking about setting up the movement for the eye of the onlooker, of the viewer. We are going to be subtly moved by that setup, and the viewer will be thankful that we're guiding them this way and setting up a three-dimensional feel via these abstract shapes. I often like listening to the sound of rain or birds, or sound of forest, or sound of creek or ocean or river. So, you know, these are like so tranquil and so promoting just like a calm state. I'm in a state of calm. It's the world is sometimes, you know, it's like I go through personal difficulties all the time, and it's hard sometimes to stay calm. Maybe a lot of times it's hard to stay calm, but I do oftentimes. Let's zoom on this lower area for a little while and continue building this up with a close-up view. My goal is to create a varied space of items within the close-by area. This is the lower portion of the picture. This is where a lot of information is going to be visible. Even though this is within a shadow, it's quite a big area to have in the painting, and so there's gotta be something really nice visually happening there. So let's see how we can diversify add variety, add interest, visually pleasing qualities. What am I thinking about when I'm adding this? I am interpreting variation of light and dark within the shadow under the trees. I am interpreting with brush marks. I want to stay within, I want to have information that's a little darker and a little lighter and maybe slightly different color at first. And then maybe I can show you what else we can do with this. So here's an up close look. Stand back often. Evaluate your progress. Here is something I can talk about. So there's an edge to the darker area, and it separates the darker area from the lighter area. In the very beginning of the painting, this edge or the shape is not as complex as it can be. So I can build complexity and transition from dark to light within the edge, within that area. It is really important not to paint the light colors within the shadow and likewise. So if I am within a lighter area, I want to stay with that for a little while and then load my brush with the darker colors that are the property of the darker area. This is because I do not want to have light information and the color and the contrast of light come into the area of the shadow. It will disrupt it and it will be counterproductive to my goal. So shadow colors, shadow tones in the shadow, and light in the light, and mid-tone in the mid-tone. I'm not painting grass blades, I'm not painting the floor of the forest. I am investigating, looking for abstract shapes of light and dark, subtle abstract shapes of light and dark within the area that I'm working in. And I am getting the complexity through this investigation and through this search, not through drawn stereotypical detail of grass blades. We're not going to do that. This is expressive painting, reliant on expressive brush strokes, brush marks, not on well-drawn single elements or photographic elements. Take time, explore, stand back. I am mixing black with red and a little bit of white, and I'm getting really nice kind of gray purples that are also good. They work really well within the shadow. Let's take a look at how that's gonna look. Oh, look at what I'm getting here. Whoa. It is I would recommend not to overdo something. I like the color and I almost want to fill a lot of space with it, but it's better, less is more in this process. So a little bit of nice new addition of another shade of color, and then maybe let's look for another version of that to add beside. Maybe a lighter version of that to go towards the back a little bit and create transition there. Movement of the brush is I'm mimicking the surface, so there's got to be some depth built into this little by little. So with these angled strokes, with these diagonals or these horizontals, I am attempting to create a notion of movement. And I'd like to also add some red and yellow mixture. It's gonna make an orange, and then with a bit of black and white, it's gonna go into all these different browns, and that goes well as with the green and the purple as well. A lot of this, it becomes easier as you continue to master your skill set. Just give it a really good amount of intention, and do, if you know you are already an artist, you already love sitting at your paint station, and you could spend hours doing this task. Well, why not then to continue investigating and advancing? Maybe take on a challenge. Take on a challenge of growing your skill level. Oh, I like these skin tone kind of looking colors. Let's see what this looks like from far away. And let's zoom out all together with this tripod. And you see? So what are we seeing? More complexity, more contrast. Here we go. There's a palette ready to go. White, yellow, red, dark red or magenta, black. We are talking about taking a surface, taking an area of the painting and building some complexity into it. So we have really general way of going about the shadows under the trees there, for example. Or I added this whole dark, got into a little bit of see-through areas. And then what's next? Let's take a look. I've taken time to work through a little bit more information on the right side of the painting. So take a look at how I moved the simpler version of this kind of surface into even more complexity. I've taken the tree trunk and I started to build more color information, more light and dark information into that. I've gotten into different areas of the picture and I added more information. Do you see the difference between the trees and how they are resolved a little bit more on the right side and less on the left side? Let's take a look at up close even more. So from really general to slightly more particular. This is the entire painting now, and let's work into the general areas, the areas that didn't get more information just yet, and figure out how I go about working into them. All right. Spray bottle, brush, palette. I'm gonna mix a bit of a lighter green to go in here. It is possible to mix a color that I'm looking for, that I already used and figured out that that's the color that I need next. It's possible to mix it, and then it's possible to compare by bringing the brush closer to the painting surface and just comparing visually if this color is close match to the previous color. So this looks a pretty good match, and I am starting here. So I'm taking this lighter area within the bottom portion of the painting where shadow information sits, and I am building complexity into that. I am creating brush strokes that kind of go over the surface and they represent lighter areas within the bottom elements, within this area of grass here. The way I'm treating, the way my strategy is to find abstract and shapes, design shapes, rather than to actually paint some grass blades. This is a classical method of painting where I am building light into the dark. It's a lot more about the painting process than it is about what I'm trying to show here. It's too early for us to be able to see individual details anyways. And I am carefully getting a feel for how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna distribute the lighter areas within the surface. My strategy is also to create larger shapes, larger combinations of brush strokes, and then accompany that with mid-size and smaller shapes, so that there is a variety of larger and smaller and even fine shapes. This method, this attributes to dynamic movement and not repetitive surface, that the complexity of a painting that's handmade, that's crafted over time. So building the painting in such way with larger, mid-size and smaller brush strokes, and carefully designing these areas of lighter and darker information, as well as different color information, all that attributes to complexity, depth, liveliness, vivid, expressive painterly quality of the surface that's unique to painting, to something made with a brush and a hand. The method of painting we are looking at me doing is a layering method. We are looking at how layering accomplishes the goals that we're setting. I am layering progressively lighter information over top of the darker information. Layering progressively lighter colors of paint that I'm mixing and choosing to work with. I am mixing a little bit of black with a little bit of red and white, and a tiny bit of yellow, or the green that turned out from the mixing of black and yellow and white. There's that nice green, olive type of green, and a little bit of black and a little bit of red with white and a tiny bit of that green will give me this really wonderful purple gray. That's a colder it's not as warm as something that has a lot of yellow in it. So temperature, just a feel of a temperature of this shade of color is cold. And that's a really effective mid-tone. It creates effectively a transition between dark, then to some warmer green mid-tones, and then to that purple gray mid-tone. And the more complexity I am able to bring into my painting, in a way, the better it is. What is that complexity? What am I really talking about here? Building with less simple color information and more rich color information. So let's use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's use a few variations of colors in one area. Let's go away from flat fills. Let's go away from careful blending, brush strokes, vivid colors, carefully chosen colors, placed together to produce a surface that says painterly brush strokes, understanding of warmer and colder color use, understanding of movement from dark to light, layering. I am mixing some red with some yellow, and I'm getting a really nice orangey brown because there is already some gray in my brush from previous painting, from previous attempt. So another addition, another color to go with in here, to have a bit of more reds, a bit more warmth happen. I mix more often than I paint almost, so I'll mix color that I will use, and then I'll use a little bit of that. And then I'll mix again another variety of this color to put beside previously painted area. I am in a painting search. I am searching for a rich palette to describe each area. And I am also looking for continuity, so I'm tying this area of light to that area, continuing to connect, to make consistent visual information continuously, use it continuously. I am rinsing my brush in a water container and I'm wiping it over the rag, and then I am continuing to mix another color. I refresh my palette with spraying water over it so that it stays moist and that the colors don't dry out, and so that my brush doesn't dry out too quickly. Working with acrylic, we're dealing with quick drying time. I want to get into this further back shadow as well, because it's a little too dark to be there like that. I want to break it up with mid-tone greens that I started to figure out on this portion of the painting. A painting this size, 40 inches by 48 inches, is a fairly labor-intensive process. I expect to work on this for at least 30 to 40 hours. I expect that I will be going forward and then going slightly back to correct things. This is always a search. This is the labor will need to happen. So in order to make this digestible to you, I will work through some areas on my own. I will put in 4 hours, 2 hours and more here and there between the recording sessions, and this will give me a chance to move the project at a pace that will make it possible to complete for me. Often I would need to spend a few hours to continue moving ahead, and if I show you initial moves and strategies and demonstrate and talk, and if I compare it to what is what's done already, then we can relate to that process, and then you can continue moving your project along slowly, and you can paint all of the parts of your project. Take time, organize your time to paint these parts of the project. Continuity, continuous movement. Excellent. It's nice. We can see the whole thing. I am creating painted information. I'm placing brush marks on the canvas, and I'm doing this quite slowly. I'm thinking about how I can move some of this color into the next area. I'm looking for findings, like these points, the key points that will show me the key, how to unlock the next area. I'm liking what's happening over here. I started to add red, brown, gray, red, brown, purple, gray, darker brown, gray to the tree trunk. And that is starting to move forward, move the object forward, and starts to go really nicely beside the darker and lighter greens within the grass behind it. Let's see how we can turn this tree into something more like this. This is nice going there. Let's get some of this here. So the key would be to figure out what do we want to keep as dark. So this is dark right now. The background, the grass behind, the shadow within the grass behind this area of the tree. Let's keep that. If this is here, if this here is darker, let's make the edge of the tree lighter. A little bit lighter. I mixed that bit of red with black and with white, and that whole palette, you see, that's all we got here. And first I will mark the edge of the object, and then I will start moving the brush on an angle that is mimicking the movement around the tree shape. So I'm painting, like I'm winding these brush strokes around, around, around to represent the cylinder of the tree trunk. As I am doing that, I need variety of colors to appear there. So I'll mix another version of this gray, red, brown, gray. Then I'll mix another version of that, and I'll put that, all of that together. I will be looking for complexity of the color. Look at what's happened there. We are really starting to see the tree emerge out of the background. It's not stuck anymore. It was too dark. It still is too dark here. But we will move it forward. And then there is no amount of care that could be. So take a lot of care, take a lot of time, craft, go back into this painted surface, build more brush stroke movement, connect these brush strokes a little bit more, see how you can put it together in a little bit more complex way. I think dark green is gonna be nice within there as well. For many of my students, when they're starting out, they would say, well, the tree is brown, or the sky is blue, but there are so many shades of blue and brown, and what's the you know, have you ever seen a tree trunk when a sunset is happening? It is glowing in some areas with bright orange and red, or when bright sunshine hits the tree trunk. So it is no longer the idea of the stereotype it is, we are now talking painterly language. There is no need to justify anything with logic that doesn't apply here anymore. So as I'm building this, it's also possible, you know how this area is a little bit lighter than this area behind the tree or beside the tree, so I can make the tree darker beside the lighter area of the background, and then I can keep it lighter next after that. So as this is the logic that I'm using in the painting. If I need to separate objects, and we will be working on that, adjusting the light and dark and the color information within everything in our painting. So I am able to navigate that. If this is lighter over here, then the tree or the object beside it is going to need to be darker. And then if this shadow behind the trees is competing with how dark the tree is, then you guessed it, the tree is gonna get lighter just there. And then we'll connect it really neatly, really nicely as we're moving that paint along, so that varied information can exist. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. It could be all of these different ways all at once. Let's see this similar action up close. What's nice is that once I figured out how I can start getting the lighter area and how it can connect with the mid-tone and the shadow, then how the tree can interact with that, then I can easily show you and transfer that finding over to this side. There's still lots and lots of areas to adjust, but look at how lovely this landed today. There's some more complexity here, and it's going together with this, and the tree is getting transformed. Let's look at up close at how I will be navigating more. So let's say this is, it looks like this now. It's a bit flat, so I want to build like notions of 3D into it. Maybe I can make the tree a bit darker on this side to disconnect it from that area there. I load the brush really carefully, look for the color that will work there, maybe darker. It's starting to look separate from the background, so I can bring the paint in with brush strokes, kind of describing the 3D form of the tree. I can give a complex variations of the colors I'm using to this area. I can experiment with, maybe I kind of like the red there, and I want to see more of it, so I just mixed myself even more of that red, and I am going to move it in other areas as well. And then I will go ahead and continue working on this further and further. Maybe if I have some red here, red brown, maybe I can have it show up in other areas beside somewhere, maybe even further than beside. And that's how it's coming about. Make a note that acrylic paint dries a little darker than what it appears like when it's first mixed or applied to the surface. Like, you know, it looks a little lighter right now, but I'm expecting that that's gonna tone down a little. That would be nice too, you know. So it's a subtle medium that we're exploring. Oh, you know, a little bit of complexity there, and then I'll come back to it anyway. And we might even see some palette knife addition at the very end when everything is nearly done. Then we can mess around with the palette knife, because we can't really break anything at that time, and we can just, never mind, we'll get there. Let's take a look. And these are my paints, conveniently placed really close by. Some water, brushes, spray bottle, chair, palette. A book is open to show me the idea about, you know, just so that I can refer to a classical artist, and if I forget something, I look. And then let's take a look at what we got going today. I'm liking how these trees in the foreground are starting to get a lot more colorful and a lot more complex. I'm liking what's happening within the grass on the floor up close, and I might put more of that on this left side of the painting where not much work has been done yet. And then we're looking at this side of the painting where it's starting to shape up a little more. No worries, guys, we'll get to see every single thing being done and talked about and up close. And I'll see you next time.